are rolling. All right. We got a side chick member, Ryan Gallop. Gallop is a coach over at, actually, why don't do me a favor? Give me your bio. Start with where you are, what you do there, and then I'm going to go to how you got out there from University of fucking Delaware.
For sure. So I'm performance director here at NAKOA. We're a training and physical therapy center in Carlsbad, California. I've been with the group that's our core group for about 10 years now. We used to be under another brand, and then we bought out of that, rebranded. We got a new building that we actually purchased. So now we're getting equity instead of burying ourselves in rent. As you know, that can be huge.
How many square feet is that building?
Our new one, it's about 5,500.
Wow.
So check this out. Our last one, to give you an idea of North County pricing, our last building was like 8,900, and we were there for 5 years. And a lot of the space was actually unusable because of how the locker rooms and some of the, offices were built out. So at basically, like, long story short, our current mortgage is like half of what our last building's rent was during the last year because of how they ramped it up over the years. And we were renegotiating, dude, literally. And we're renegotiating last summer during quarantine. And we're saying, hey, like, we want to stay, but like, this can't continue, because they were going to keep ramping it on the next 5-year lease. And we're like, what we pay is already astronomical. And our main owner, Jay, was like, he was trying to work all the angles and they weren't having it. And then we were like, all right, well, peace. We're going to go find our own building. And we know, like, they had some strange new business going in there. And we're like, they're going to be looking for a new tenant in a year, because that place is not going to make money. They're not going to be able to afford it. And then they're going to have to go through it's so much work. Yeah, exactly.
Those fucking jerk offs, greedy cocksuckers.
So now we have, we have to deal with we're in a big kind of business park. So we have a board that we have to deal with. But besides that, we're our own landlord. So we've been remodding all year, updating, because it was a warehouse style setup, which we love for the space. But we're like enclosing the physical therapy area. We have a coaching office and lounge. We're glassing some things out. So we have a big training space, but then a little more segmentation and organization, because of we wanted physical therapy to be able to be enclosed for, like, we want air conditioning and heat in there, because we're open. We have the back doors open year round. And but it's great, new equipment's coming in every week. We redid the floors. We're doing the ceiling. Like, our athletes came in and everybody actually was stoked when they moved in, and we're like, give us a year. Like, you won't even recognize this place come next fall. But it's the problem right now, because everything's backed up because of COVID, whether it's equipment or laborers. So, like, we're having to strategically find teams that can either work at night or on weekends, because we don't want to close. Like, we have a lot of people who come through our doors, and we don't want to shut down for a week just to do a remod. So we're finding people who can come in, 6 to 10 o'clock at night or all weekends. Some of our Friday afternoons are funny around here. Like, some demo crew will start and we're like still wrapping up sessions and telling our people, like, hey, trust us, it'll be worth it. But it's coming along. We're stoked. And we do physical therapy. That's a big part of our business. And we've been growing that over the years. We actually do it in-house. So that's an entity under the NAKOA umbrella. We work hand in hand. We have an amazing PT director, Allison. She crushes it. She got a bunch of awesome practitioners under her. We finally look like we got the insurance thing. I don't know if you guys ever dealt with that, but that whole business system is so screwed. So we got that pretty locked down. We do some offsite work with, like, we do corporate wellness for, like, fire departments. We do some offsite sports teams. And then, so, I mean, we're doing well here. I also, we're getting into the online space like everybody else during quarantine. We're like, shit, we got the time and we really need to get into it. So we're doing, we're building out our own programming. We'll have some PT, therapy, rehab modalities as well, pushed out through online programming. We're kind of dabbling into some other things. I'm working for, like, a action sports masterclass type thing, like a lessons group, and hoping to get in there. And that's kind of to push people back to NAKOA. Got back into the rugby world this spring. Got pulled in mid-season to work with Legion, this local San Diego pro team, which has been that's been my passion forever. And I've helped them out in the past a little bit, but I just got thrown into the fire this year, and it was definitely crazy, but it was awesome. I missed that environment. It was great getting on with the boys, traveling with them, being on site, and I was able to mix it and blend it in with my NAKOA athletes and not compromise schedules. I just basically slept a little less than usual and flew a little bit more, but it was a wild spring, but it was awesome.
So good. Are you a part owner in NAKOA?
Yeah, there's a group of us as directors that, you know, we kind of do more like a revenue share, basically system. And in the past, we've done equity, but when you're a growing business in an expensive area, equity can be like the same as debt, right? Yeah. So we've looked at the percentage thing in the past, and in the new model, you know, our group of directors, it's more like a profit sharing system that we have. And it really helps unify us, because like I really push the athlete world. You know, two of our other top coaches are really driving our semi-private training world in here, which is a lot of general population. It's a lot of our PT patients who are segueing into, you know, fitness training. Our physical therapy team's crushing it. There's a bunch of people who work in that. So we kind of, even our corporate wellness, like I said, our fire contracts are growing, and we love that, because we're like helping the local heroes, and we're teaching them how to move properly and not get hurt. And obviously that plays into their insurance and us able to keep them healthy and out of rehab, out of the hospital, out of, you know, workman's comp situation. So, but the motivation with the rev share is that we're all pushing each other and supporting each other. It's not the, hey, well, you know, in Q1, this one did awesome, so I'm stoked. We want everybody supporting and pushing each other, and then we can get our, you know, when we're showing profits and we're in that right region, everybody can benefit. And we've set it up. We want people to be bought in. You know, we've had so much turnover. You've been through the training world. Like some places, some people, they're not that serious about it. It's kind of a stepping stone to somewhere else. Some people realize they want to do it on their own. So we've cycled through a lot of coaches and in the past, and we've kind of tightened our team down and our model down. It's all semi-private based work. We do very little one-on-one anymore. We're you know, big on pushing the programming, and the value is in like our knowledge and our experience and our ability to use PT when necessary. Not that, hey, you're here for a coach and that's all you care about. We used to do that in the old world, too much private coaching. Basically, you can bring in a ton of money a month, but you're paying out even more because you have to pay out for all those sessions. So we like our model a lot better. It's a lot more scalable. We've been approached about doing NAKOAs in other cities and other areas, and we knew we had to get a proper, you know, both education system, but also a scalable approach that, like, hey, you know, the way we used to do it, we couldn't pluck and drop into another city and be like, all right, we need 150 private coaching clients and, you know, 12 awesome personal trainers. That's not a scalable model at all. So I think what we're doing now is a little bit, it's more well-rounded. It's able for coaches to keep focused on what they love and not be training those 12-hour days where, you know, I mean, sometimes it still happens, but we know those on top of each other can lead to burnout and lead to a lack of interest. And we've never wanted that. We've all been there before. I've been there before. I've been training a long ass time, and I've had times where just the hours in the day are just, it adds up. You go home, you're like, oh, you got nothing left.
So what is it that you're offering then? So you're offering semi-private coaching with personalized programming, and then how many people you can limit that to?
So we use Team Builder is our in-house platform that we use. So our clients or athletes, if they're on top of it, they can actually look at their phone, follow along. But usually a coach will have a computer up, inputting things. Like we had a coach traveling last week, and I jumped in and covered a bunch of sessions. And these are a bunch of people I've just said hello to before. They're not my normal clients, but I was able, you know, there's notes, you can interact with them. We educate people on the power of being in the program. And then, yeah, I mean, typical groups are in the 2 to 4 person range. It's kind of like, from our general population standpoint, it's kind of like the Alan Cosgrove model that he does up in LA, where it's really, you know, the program and the team-based coaching approach is what fuels semi-private. So people can basically have a little more flexibility in their schedule. They don't have to be completely married to that one coach, but that, you know, every client has a lead coach who might be pushing the programming or making adjustments and tweaks. And then, but any coach could cover them on a given day because we all have access to the same programs and platforms. And then for my athletes, I mean, I'm doing most of their programming. And like next, you know, when I go home next, not this week, but next week, I'll have all them pre-programmed, get them on another coach's schedule, fill them in on, hey, you know, I have like a lot of like action sports and like local high school athletes. So I try and keep them in similar groups. The programming is, some of the skill-based work is the same. And then obviously there are different levels when it comes to their strength or conditioning work, but I can, you know, fill them in ahead of time and get feedback after the fact of like, hey, you know, we have some of our coaches they're like Mike, they have like a PT and a corrective exercise background. So I'm going to try and get one of my young guys with some of my people next week and be like, hey, here's their program. But during breaks, hey, he's had this thing going on. Well, you know, check it out for me, that kind of stuff. Like I always try and add value for my athletes when I'm traveling. I don't want them to have an excuse to be like, oh, I should take a week off, Ryan's not here. Like a lot of them have upcoming, whether it's surf competitions or, you know, a fall season for their high school. They have serious stuff ahead of them. And I want to make sure they don't use this as an opportunity to get lazy.
What kind of billing structure are you using? Are you getting guys signed up per month or per sessions or for the program? Or?
So we use MindBody Online. That's like our system for both billing and scheduling. And then, yeah, we're really big on pushing the monthly membership now. Like in the past, some people, obviously, I have a ton of athletes who travel a lot. So we make it a yearly membership, and I'll say, hey, get on the twice a week membership, but you know, we'll roll your sessions roll over. Like you have a year of that membership, and here's how many sessions you have in that membership. And the reality with my people, because a lot of them are competitive and they travel, it's like, hey, we're always going to train, you know, 3 to 4 days a week when you're in town. And that'll just balance out for all those weeks when you're traveling. And I'll push programs to them. I can use Team Builder to program for them while they're traveling. A lot of them, especially the surfers, if they're traveling, it's either for a comp or a surf trip and to get clips because they need to get videos for their sponsors. So they're already surfed out. So they're doing like, if they're doing warm-ups and some daily maintenance stuff, I'm happy. Usually they're not going to find a weight room when they're surfing 7 hours a day, and I'm fine with that.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, we went that model. I mean, we'll still do the packages of semi-privates for the people who want to drop in and are scared of the membership. But we built it so the yearly membership, it's more they're buying, hey, you're buying your yearly program from NAKOA. And your membership is just how many sessions you get to train with us per week. But your you know, if you need extra conditioning, we can put that in your program and then you can carry that out on your own. We have some physical therapy people who might do extra conditioning and they're not technically even in a program yet, but we know they're going to be. So we can give them conditioning stuff to do on their own. And then when they segue into their, you know, semi-private coaching model, whether they're a general population or an athlete, you know, they're not completely deconditioned. They have a starting point and the lead coach can kind of go from there. And the idea is to get people to think of to get them to think of a way of get them away from thinking of that one-off session. Like I pay this much money to see my coach on this day. Cause then that's kind of fleeting. They don't have that commitment. They're not looking at it from the long term. We want all our clients to be around forever. We know consistency is key when it comes to training. So if they're bought in to a yearly approach instead of like, I get 8 sessions this month, there's more likelihood for them to be committed, for them to do the extra nutrition, recovery, outside conditioning that we're pushing to them, you know, because when we're retesting or just showing them their improvements, they know it's because they've been bought in for a while. We're not selling some bullshit like we're going to cure anything in 8 workouts in the first month. And we used to do a lot of packages and private coaching and whatnot, and we just learned from it. The overhead in that world and the turnover in that world is just too high. So we wanted to get more to the membership. And for me, like I said, with my athletes, I want them thinking like, you guys travel so much, so when you're in town, I want you in as much as possible, because it's not like we're just going to lift heavy all these days, especially action sports people. You already got to be specific and choosy with how you strength train them, because they want to skate or they want to surf or whatever every day. They're not looking at an off season like, okay, this month all we're doing is strength and conditioning. They never have that mindset. So I want them to know like, hey, you know, perfect example with all the surfers, November, a lot of them are going to Hawaii for like a month or two. And whether it's the big contests or charging pipeline and getting big waves, they know in the fall, like if they're around in September and October, like we're training our asses off. I don't care if there's good south swells in SoCal, like you can surf sore, but you need to get stronger and fitter because you're about to go to Hawaii for 6 weeks. And then when you get there, you have to keep training. And it's a natural for them to be, they're serious during that time of year anyway. So it kind of fits into me pushing that. But I can say, I know you're traveling most of August, and that's fine. We're going to make it up, you know, the second half of September and through October until you leave for Hawaii. We're going to, as many days as you can get in, please get in. We need to get you in that position. And then they're not thinking like, oh, well, I only pay for 2 days a week. It's like, no, you pay for your yearly program. Sometimes it's traveling and online, and sometimes it's you're seeing me 4 days a week and you're resting on Wednesday. That's it. So I want, you know, that membership helps us push that. So they're not thinking of, wow, I paid this many semi-privates these couple weeks. They're looking at, no, I paid this for a year, which is already a great value. And I just use it differently and I'm programmed differently throughout the year, depending on competition schedule.
How long have you been on that model?
It's funny. I started pushing the semi-privates personally, like 5 or 6 years ago, because so many of my athletes, I'm working with them. I'm like, dude, these are like teenagers. Like they'd have more fun in a small group. They'd want to train, you know, if I'm grouping together a couple skaters, they're already friends. They already probably went to the park earlier that morning together or going afterwards. And, you know how it is when you're with somebody for an hour and they're like a 15-year-old ADD'd out athlete, like there's only so much engagement you can get out of them. And you realize like, shit, a lot of my action sports athletes and even some of my competitive high school athletes, they have crazy school schedules or they're homeschooled. So they're like, I'm training these people during the day. I did it like 6 years ago this happened. I'm training all these privates like 10 a.m., 11, 12, 1, 2. And every day, 3 of them are trying to move their time around. Yeah. And I'm like, I can't, you know, because literally, dude, the waves are sick. Can I come in 2 hours later? And I'm like, fuck no. So I have somebody then. And I started doing it kind of organically, like, hey, just jump in with them, see how it goes. And I kind of experimented with it for a couple months and was like, shit, this is the way. But at that point, we weren't doing any memberships. So I just made a semi-private rate. So here's our private rate, here's our semi rate. You get a little more freedom with your scheduling, and I'll make sure to block you with like athletes, but sometimes they were different and it's almost fun. You get like a big ass rugby player and like a scrawny little skater, and they're doing the same like hurdle prep work at the end of the warm up. And they're like, oh shit, like we're athletes, we do completely different things, but you know, they realize the benefit and they also get to talk about different stuff. So they're not blabbing about the same shit day in and day out. But the membership, our kind of our GM director, Zach, he went to Cosgrove's clinic a couple of years ago, and we just slowly started integrating it. And honestly, it was one of those, we lost money before we started making more money, because we had all these people who were so used to buying big packages of semis or privates, and we're transitioning them to a membership where technically it's cheaper per session, but it's a yearly commitment and you're looking at your sessions on a monthly scale. So there was pushback. Some people were arguing it. Zach literally had to show them the numbers. Like, look how many sessions you did in the last year paying this much for semi-privates. You'll pay this much. You'll literally save like $1,200. Like, we're giving you back $1,200 if you train exactly the same as you did last year. So what's the problem? So we had to change a bunch of people's mindset around that. And some people are just, you guys know it, some people hate the membership thing because they've been dicked over by a gym that said, oh, you're not moving away, so we're not going to refund you or whatnot. And some people, you know, we've gone that route where we're like, fine, here, semi-privates, you do 10 packs, you're paying $15 more per session than a membership, but if that's your choice, go for it. And, you know, that's something it took a while to get people on, but now it's the message up front. We kind of don't even talk about the a la carte or the packages. It's all membership based because we're preaching our programming on a yearly scale. And if they're just like, I hate that, I'll just pay you, you know, $500 a month instead of $299. It's like, okay, fair. And you know, that's becoming more rare though, because we've gotten people more to understand how the new model benefits them and how it actually helps their mindset from the beginning. Not like, I'm going to try this guy out for 3 months and see what happens.
So do you have any, as part of the co-owners of NAKOA, is there any like business guy, or is everyone there all feet on the floor? Because
no,
we know many good coaches, but not many good gyms that actually do well.
Exactly. So I'd say our owner, Jason, he's our founder. He's backed out of training over the years. Like, he can still do it. He does manual therapy occasionally. He's like a massage guru, but he did a ton of that when he was younger. And he doesn't like, you know, I use him every once in a while with some of my, you know, elite athletes who get racked up and out of nowhere. And they're like, can I get in PT? I'm like, no, but Jay can work on you. But he's really backed out of the full on training pretty much since we started the brand. He's got some business mentors. We have a couple investors that are also kind of like function as kind of like CFO help. And we, you know, when it comes to buying new buildings, new business models, they kind of advise us, and it's great because they have skin in the game because they've actually invested. So we've done that in the past where, you know, you're getting business help from somebody, but they're like a client or they're a friend of somebody, and they can have all these wild ideas and think they know what the hell they're talking about in the fitness world or the performance world, but they've never really done it before, and they don't have any skin in the game. So what they say is like, it can totally fail and they don't really care because they just gave us friendly advice. So our investors have played a big role in that world. And yeah, like we have weekly manager meetings. We update each other. We look at the numbers. We talk about, hey, this side's growing. How do we get this side to catch up? Is it worth to keep investing in this side? Or do we need to grassroots focus again on the building? Because we've definitely had times, we've been doing this a while together, where like the building is good. So then we start chasing, you know, other things, whether it's a new building or teams or the online thing, you know, like we definitely at times get excited about something new. And our new model and the way we have our team structured, it's just kind of impossible for us to forget about this building. The grassroots business is physical therapy and really high quality training. And as long as those things keep growing, then the other things become easier to chase. And in the past, we definitely probably forgot about the building for a little bit and kind of took some things for granted because we'd gotten good at just doing what we were doing. But the way we have a team structure now, that just can't happen. We have too many eyes on the different revenue streams and the different services that we're offering that, like, hey, no one's going to forget about that because there's two people who that's all they're focused on, and they're filling us in each week. I do all the athlete stuff. So it's not only the athletes training under me here, but like bringing in new teams. When I work with Legion, I'm building NAKOA as their physical therapy provider. So even if I'm doing offsite stuff or like side hustles, they always bleed back into this business because this is what we're all pushing to be our future.
So looking at, I was just doing numbers, and I never did. Brooker and I we're literally just talking about structures and how to go about our future business with personal training and everything. And I do all group training, whether it's my NFL guys. I try to stay away from one-on-one training as much as possible, but it happens. Like I have people that,
of course,
that want to pay $150, $200 a session for a one-on-one. Like it is what it is. So I'm not going to turn it away. There's just specific times that they can do it and specific times that they can't. Like I have my groups during whatever time, and then I have my one-on-ones during the other. The problem with this model and this buy-in is, in order to get this type of buy-in, like Brooker and I were BSing last week. What'd you say? You get 10 guys or something like that or Brooker, were you saying 50 guys at $5K a year or something? What were the numbers you were throwing around?
No, I was to generate a 500 grand a year business. If you got 100 members paying $5,000 a year for semi-private, personalized plan training, that's one of the ways we can get there. But yeah, we were going back and forth on many other ways, because that's also, it depends on the area. Like in Swiss, that would actually be very cheap for what they're going to get. So but in other places, you wouldn't be able to get away with it.
So if you're at $299 a month, and I'm not saying that those are your numbers, but if you're at $299 a month, that comes out to be like $3,500, $3,600 a year that you end up getting from each person. To generate anything substantial, I mean, you're 50 to 100 people need to sign up for your commitment. How many people do you have in your fucking gym?
We got a good amount.
Holy shit.
It fluctuates a little bit. Oh yeah. So we have, and right now the beauty of this model is we still have a lot of clients, but we have less coaches than ever. And I actually do a revenue share on my people. So I have a percentage of all my memberships because I stack my people differently than the other coaches. So if I'm covering for a coach, I'll just get paid like a regular top tier coach. And that doesn't happen often. Usually I only work with my people in here because I'm doing either offsite teams or the online stuff. But, besides me right now, we only have 3 main coaches on the floor, and we're adding a 4th. And our 2 are Jason, our main owner, and then his wife, Bianca, who really, her main focus is the fire. She really drives our corporate wellness stuff. But as far as like training on the floor, there's like 4 of us, and there used to be like 12 of us doing privates all day long. So at that point, in those years, and that's when we weren't as business savvy as Brooker was asking us. We've learned a lot since then. We were just chasing, gross revenue every month, but we were not looking at our freaking payroll. Like there was plenty of months in the old building with private coaching shit. We've had a couple old buildings where we're over 100K a month in private training, and we're not profiting. Like because of rent, overhead, and payroll. Literally, imagine making 110 grand and you put out 117 grand from a business. And that's when PT was small and training was huge. What we've done with semi-private and growing our PT department is like leveled everything out. So now we have a lot more consistency month to month, and we can try and grow both of them at the same time together and not put all our eggs in one basket. Like for years, way back in the day, our coaching carried our PT department. We knew we wanted good PT. We don't use aides, so we only have DPTs working with people for 45 to 60 minutes. Like we run a very progressive and honestly less profitable PT model than most clinics because we wanted to do it right. We wanted to actually help people, not just take their insurance money and stick them on a bike for 30 minutes. So for years, until we got insurance and a certain amount of cash business coming in for PT, training carried PT. And now it's the other way around. Like we're so level. And there was a couple months ago where we had a couple memberships, there was a dip. because a lot of people had to redo the next month, one of those random months where PT like carried us for that month. And it was one of those, like, we could have gotten scared by it, but we were like all grateful because it was the opposite of how it used to be. And we know that growing them both together is the future. It's not one or the other. Like, that's our model's built on, we offer the best service in physical therapy and training in the area. And we don't want one to have, to be the only one that makes money.
So you mentioned about, obviously this is for sure easier to scale, right? So from personal to semi-private is great, but it's not that many guys that you have in your groups. If it's a maximum of 4 and you've only got 3 or 4 coaches, so it's still rather exclusive, isn't it?
So it's all schedule blocks, right? So our two of our main coaches, they're 6 a.m. to like 1 with 4 to 5 people in every hour, right?
Right.
And that's 2 guys at once. So that's 10 people on the floor at most hours of the morning. And then midday, there might be some smaller groups. Most of my athletes train from noon till 5. And sometimes I have like 6 people in a group because I have a bunch of, it's a bunch of skaters and surfers who want to do their thing all morning, come in at lunchtime, go take a nap, and then go surf or skate again. And I'll just, the other groups are smaller at noon. So I just take over half the building and we're on with it. We're all tight in here. We work as a team. We don't have any renters or independent contractors. So like, we're able to be like, hey, I need 1 rack and the whole turf for this hour. And the other guy's like, oh, I'm good. I got 3 people. And we just need some open space and kettlebells and med balls today. It's pretty mellow. So we have that ability to work the floor really well. And, then some of our younger coaches, they're our afternoon crew. So they have people from 2 to 6:30. And, we're trying to get 3 to 4 people in all those hours too. So that's basically how we're utilizing a smaller team to service a lot more people and having the programming and dialed up. I get behind on programming because I'm like a weirdo. Like, I like programming in my head because I can make adjustments and not feel like locked in a box all the time. But that's with my people who I've been with for years. When you can't do that when it's new clients or somebody else's clients. So, our directors in the training world, especially for our general population people, they're super on top of Team Builder. They're programming out a month or 2 and then making adjustments as they go, so that as we add people in, we're not completely like inundated with, and we're not starting from scratch either. Like, you guys know, you got your GPP programs that this is for Gen Pop weight loss, or this is, they're coming back from a bunch of injuries. So here's our foundational stuff. Here's my athlete GPP foundational, and I tweak it as I go. But like, every time we bring a new client in, it's not like a coach needs to spend 5 hours starting from scratch. In Team Builder, you have the ability to copy, paste, load, save workouts, and then you can get really dialed. You can paste out a new month and then tweak it. Like, hey, they hinge like shit in their assessment, so we're going to do more body weight hinging. We can't load them with RDLs or swings in the first month. We're going to regress. So it makes it so we're not bottlenecked constantly. Like, we used to be bottlenecked all the time. There was a time where we literally had, like I said, we're making over 100K a month, and most of that's private training. And we literally had clients who couldn't get on the books because 5 of us coaches had too busy. Literally, MBO, which is our scheduling system, was like purple for 9 hours straight, and you'd beg to have a lunch in there. And like, we had multiple coaches in that world for years, and we're not profiting. Obviously, that's a broken system because of how much, good coaches, you got to pay them per hour, and you only have one person paying for that hour. Like, we're kind of in where your world now, Mike. If somebody just says, I need private coaching, it's like, well, that starts at 120. And if you're not going to train 3 days a week, it's more like 150. It's almost like we want it to be a deterrent. Like, private coaching is really hard on our schedule. So if you want it, if you really want me to piece you in to all our semi-privates or group, and you only work with me or you only work with this coach, you got to pay big for that hour, because normally 4 people would be in that hour. So that's how we've been able to kind of flip or try and flip their mindset.
Bro.
And then they're like, well, private coaching $70 at LA Fitness. And we're like, well, then if that's what you want, go do that. Like, if you want one of our coaches to be private with you, knowing everything else we do, then here's the number. It's got to be big or it's not worth it.
Bro, you were doing 250 one-on-ones a week?
You
had in your gym doing...
At one point, 230 was our max. Private. That's no semis. Privates. Oh, yeah. By the way, while we were doing that, we had 25 group classes also.
So where do you get, and I mean, that's incredible, that volume, but that turnover is nuts too. So I do everything now. Since COVID, I haven't done packages. I haven't done monthly rates because everyone's been so afraid of everything closing down. And then now I just too lazy to fucking go off. I just do session by session. Like, I don't care.
Okay.
Like, you want to come in, but like,
but
go on.
But with the credit, swiping credit cards every day, you got to pay more for that.
I don't take credit cards. Venmo or Zelle.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude, I use Zelle personally and Venmo. I like them both.
That's it.
That's one thing we've done that before, where we're like, people are like, I want to pay as we go. But because we run a credit card system, because of PT and retail and copays and all that bullshit, when we do one-offs, we're paying extra fees like shit. I think either our last year or the second to last year in our building, we had 35 grand of credit card fees over the year.
That's why I won't do it. I will not do it.
Yeah.
I refuse to give credit cards 1%, 2%, 3% of my money. So that means every 100 transactions, they get 3 of them. Absolutely not.
Yeah,
they're not getting my fucking money. They're not working for my money. This is fucking ridiculous. I'm not letting them have it. So I've had people that come in like, well, if I can't pay by credit card, then I'm not gonna do it. I don't give a fuck. So like, I was
gonna ask how you probably deal with some of that shit up front, where some people are like, wait, this sounds shady. I can't use a credit card. But I mean, if they, like you said, if they want to be there, everyone can Venmo. Like freaking 10-year-olds have Venmo nowadays. Like everyone has it.
Exactly. So now I don't do Venmo. I do Zelle. My banker told me don't do Venmo.
Chase.
They said just do Zelle because it's banks within banks. There's no fees associated. It's locked in and shit. So it's not like they're gonna hack Zelle like they could Venmo. So I'm real nervous about that stuff.
Do people ask for like receipts all the time or invoices from you, or like keeping track or anything?
No. But dude, we don't do a lot of volume like you. Like I don't. I mean, maybe in the year we'll have 500 people come in and out, right? But not like monthly. And it won't be 500 people. No fucking way we'll have 500 people. Maybe if we do teams. But we do session by session. And my clients, again, like I'm in a very wealthy area, but San Diego's not fucking cheap either. But my clientele, I mean, I have some of the best clientele. They hunt me down to give me money. They're like, yo, we owe you money. So I'm real fortunate with that, where I've been burnt a handful of times. Honestly, like I can think back of how many times I've been burnt. That's how few I've been burnt by like my clients. So it's okay. Sometimes we'll keep track of sessions in like a book or some shit like that. Okay. And then like, hey, by the way, you owe this. They'll write a check. Said check.
And
check,
then for
Venmo, whatever.
Is your taxes actually easier because you're only bringing in money one way?
I guess, I don't know.
Or as far as like your accounting, you got a good accountant then.
You're gonna have to ask my fucking accountant. I don't know.
You're like, I got a guy. Hey.
Yeah. So I mean, my numbers, it's whatever's deposited in the fucking bank. I just give the accountant the statements. Like, here, figure it out. And I pay for everything on my credit card or in a check. Other than that, like I don't know. To me, the accounting's really fucking easy.
No, that is, because that's why I was asking, because you only have one way. You only have one method you have to count at the end of every month. Yeah. Like we have credit cards, and the physical therapy credit cards versus training credit cards. Some people paying copays. Some people want to pay cash. Some people want to write checks like old fashioned. It's definitely a little more work, I think, in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So I mean, in that type of shit, no. And that's why. So our people don't need receipts because Venmo leaves a trail, and so does check.
Yeah,
So
100%.
we don't ever need to do receipts. I've written a handful of receipts or invoices in my life, and it's like, something scribbled on a piece of paper. Like what the
Yeah,
nothing.
exactly.
They're like, oh, put it on a letterhead. I'm like, fucking letterhead. I ain't got shit, bro. Like, what? Look
Yeah.
at me. Do I look like the type of guy that has a letterhead? So with that method, with your method, that's incredible. You need volume. How do you get the foot traffic? Like my gym, there's not a person that competes in sports competitively in our area that hasn't heard of Free Strength, right? And we have thousands of people in this area, but we don't have thousands of members. How do you get these people in the door?
Well, that's the thing, right? Is like we always say we're going to have client turnover because people move, people age out, people all of a sudden, can't afford it, even though, they were bragging about how wealthy they were 2 months ago in a session. But, a big part of our abilities around here and reach is we're longevity. And to be honest, we're a good fucking group of people. To put it kind of simply, we've always had an environment that anybody from any age and any ability felt comfortable going to. And we've always really done good business and build good relationships. So no matter social media and paid marketing for online, all that bullshit, like we are always going to be kind of like you, a big word of mouth place. And we have competition in the area for the performance world. There's a million CrossFits and F45s and boot camp places and box gyms around us. And what we've realized, a lot of people end up with us, just like some of our best coaches have experienced the bullshit in the other areas and are like, wow, you guys kind of cut through a lot of that. We're not an open gym. I think you're similar. Like people aren't just coming and going, no meatheads or taking selfies. We don't even have fucking mirrors out on the floor. Like people come here to train or to rehab and to get better. There's a lot of community-based interaction. People are almost tribal based on their times, right? Like they might not play the same sport or, even normally talk to this person on the street, but when they see him for a couple of weeks at 10 a.m., they just become friendly. And then they realize they know people. And, we do a good job. You know how this works. If you do a good job with teenage and younger athletes, those parents are like your biggest advocates. They freaking love blabbing to the town. I've gotten teams out of that kind of stuff where I worked with one individual player who happened to be really good. They look really good the next year, which makes me look really good. And all of a sudden a coach hits me up and is like, hey, we want that program, but I want it for the whole team. And I'm like, now we're talking. And we actually, like you used to do with that Catholic football program, we do a lot of our team stuff off site because we don't want to flood the building with 30 sweating meathead high school kids at once because we have a lot of different demographics in here. But whenever you do stuff off site, that's your best marketing, right? You're rocking the shirt. People have heard of you, and now they see that if the team's successful, even better. We've been able to kind of produce consistent results and build a lot of quality relationships. Like I've talked to so many young coaches. That's why I say, like, don't be an asshole. Stick to your, principles in training and as a human, and be honest with people. Like I feel like we cut through a lot of bullshit. We don't have our sales pitch is just honesty about our programming and probably what your issues are and what you need to get better at. We don't have a lot of fluff. We don't, there's a lot of places that kind of sell based on equipment or hot trainers wearing next to nothing clothes and all that shit. Like we're not like that. And we've been doing it a while. So even people might have heard of us for 5 years and then finally their kid's 16 and wants to play for the elite club team. And they hit me up and the dad will always be like, oh, I've always known you guys, heard you're awesome, but now it's time. Like I'm bringing my kid in. So I think a lot of it's just longevity in the same area and having a consistent crew of people that, we back what we say. We don't screw people over when it comes to money or accountability measures. And, we actually love what we do. And if you stay in this field, shit, I'd say more than 5 to 8 years, you have some kind of passion around helping people, whether it's sports. I always joke with people, I love sports more than training. Training is more a main means for me to be involved in sports and to help athletes out. But like, the longer you do it and you believe in and you still care about it, I feel like people see that that's genuine. You're not, I joke, my brother owns a financial shop down the road. If I was out here chasing money, I would have been working for him 15 years ago. Like, I'm doing this because I love it. And obviously we want to make a living out of it. So you push forward in that mindset. But, I think when you speak to it and give people your heart around, this is why I like helping athletes. This is why I like helping people. And, they buy into it. They see that it's not bullshit.
So how did you end up out there? You and I found out we've been in the side chick for geez, I don't even know how many years now.
It's the beginning. Yeah. When Kier started it,
it's been a fucking while. And then like, maybe like a year in, we both found out that we both went to Delaware.
Delaware and Dickinson D, same dorm freshman year.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's so funny. But how did you end up out in San Diego? Like you're a Montauk guy, and then you went to UDel, and then you fucking go out to Cali?
Exactly. So wrapped up at Delaware, didn't know what the hell I wanted to do, got a health and exercise science degree. I knew I wanted to train, but at that time I wasn't super focused or really clear on what I wanted. I knew I wanted to keep playing rugby. I knew I wanted to keep having fun. I worked at home through the summer and fall at Montauk after graduating. And, that town, you've been around the Hamptons, it's bustling and it's great in the summer, but it gets really quiet the rest of the year. And I played rugby that fall. I worked at some gyms, but it was like, I always kind of knew I wasn't going to be a year-round guy out there after, getting out of college. My brother had moved out to San Diego a year before. I actually have a twin brother. He moved out a year before. I visited him twice. And then my best friend from college, actually, he hit me up and was like, I think we had joked about it, like trying out Cali. And he hit me up in like November and was like, dude, like I'm doing a cross-country fun shit with a buddy from home. And then I'm going to stay in San Diego. Like, should I get a 1-bedroom or a 2? He was like half joking. And I was like, fuck it, get a 2-bedroom. I'll be out there after New Year's. And I actually worked for my dad the last 2 months, just painting houses in the cold, working in basements, but I just wanted a bunch of cash. I could make more money with him than my gym job. So worked with him, saved up a little bit, had some fun with my friends over the holidays, visited a college buddy. And then I just hammered out here by myself. I went maniac style, like by myself, 3.5 days, like pinning it, just bleary eyed by the time I got out here. And, played rugby, got in with some jobs, and then, things, I knew I loved it. I honestly didn't really learn proper strength conditioning or performance training till like I studied for the CSCS. I had Delaware, I got a very general health and exercise science degree and education. I had one strength conditioning class, and we learned the most fundamental shit. I didn't until I started pushing into CSCS and really chasing performance for myself. It was actually selfish. I wanted to get better at rugby and I wanted to play at the higher level on my team. So I learned how to train for myself. Immediately regretted I hadn't been training like that my whole life because I felt the difference. And then through that, I started making a push to really work with more athletes. I still was working at a college gym and then a really fancy gym downtown, making good money, but it was mostly personal training. And it was just like my passion wasn't there just to make people look good or, get people to lose weight. Like I liked the people I worked with, but they brought me in this place for be a performance coach. And the reality is it was too fancy and douchey to have any real athletes go to it. So that's when I started branching out into some other places. Ironically, I worked at a Velocity. That's where I really learned all my like speed and agility and plyos and Olympic lifting stuff. And my boss and friend there, Brent Calloway, shout out BC. He's a legend. He's at Exos. He's like their top combine guy. He's the one. 2 years later, I was getting a gig with USA Sevens. And I asked Brent, like, hey, I'm trying to get my speed up with the rugby world. Do you know anybody? And he's like, oh, yeah, I know this young British dude. He's down with Argentina now for us. He's He's a funny dude, but he's smart as shit. And that's how I met Kier, through an email. And we just interacted a little bit. And then a couple of years later, he starts the freaking side chick. And that's how I met all you guys.
So an important question for anybody that is a rugby fan. What position are you playing, 7s or 15s, and what position?
I'm officially retired now. I actually played competitive 7s at 37, 38, and 39. I came out of retirement after a big break, and all my teammates are 25. We're trying to make nationals. I proved I could do it, but after that, it was 2 summers ago. After that season, I was like, no more. Maybe some old boys down the road, but I mainly play 9 and 10. So I like, yelling at all you forwards, telling everyone what to do. But yeah, I played 15. I actually prefer, I'm built more for 7s, but I actually preferred 15s. I played high level 7s in college in the summer with our local men's club. And I loved it, but 15s being bigger team, especially when you're 9 and 10 and you have more of that general role. In 7s, once the ball's out, everyone's kind of doing the same thing. And actually playing 9 and 7s is stressful as shit because you're the sweeper. So if anyone busts through the line, you either make the tackle or you don't, and everyone sees it. So I didn't mind doing that, but I definitely paid for it. My shoulders have been jacked up for a while from some of those hits.
So you were playing high level 7s at 36, 37, and 38 years old?
37, 38, and 39. And the last 2 springs, all the young guys on the team still bug me to play. And they're like, come on, because I can be a field general. I'm not skinning people as much. I'm always been shifty and fast for my age, and I can still move. But as far as being I can be the professional guy at practice who we're training seriously, leading warm-ups, speed sessions, repeatability work. And then just being, I'm like the old wise man on the team. Shit, the first summer I came out of retirement, we're getting ready to play in our first tournament. And this young kid I'm talking to, he's the monster. And I'm like, dude, how old are you? And he told me, and I realized I had started playing rugby in high school and he hadn't been born yet. And now we're teammates. I was like, I don't know if this is cool or completely fucked up, but it is what it is. So yeah, man. I would have to train. I trained all spring to do it. I mean, 7s in the US is a short summer season. You got a handful of tournaments, but I would train I had to. I had to train like a pro, or else I would have been completely lost out there.
I tell you what, I need some of that California sunshine, because you look far too good for playing rugby that late in your life, man.
Well, I got some metal in me that I got covered up, and I definitely I've paid for it. Let's put it that way. Rugby is definitely, it's my passion. I love it, but I've put a lot into it, and I'm definitely feeling some of it the older I get. That's for sure.
No, that's cool, man. It's cool to hear, a US guy and playing well and stuff like that, because it's almost foreign and it's so big everywhere else in the world. And with the biodiversity that you've got over there, you'd think these guys could rip it up if they were.
Yeah, for sure.
Sourced well and picked guys and had some decent coaching. They'd be an absolute force. So, Mike, what was you going to say?
So you play rugby, and then you also surf, and now you work with skateboarders, surfers, that whole crew. How'd you get those motherfuckers in a weight room and then to fork over money?
Yeah, especially surfing, because surfing must be I would love for you to go into this, because surfing is one of them sports that everybody wants to do. Loads of people say they're good at it, but basically no one can do it, and it's brutal as fuck. As soon as you're out there in the water, I remember, Mike, I think I read a paper once, and they tracked the heart rate of a bunch of surfers that were out there, and their heart rate for over 4 hours was above 180 beats per minute. It is serious, especially the high level guys that Ryan's working with. These guys are fit as fuck. They might not look it, but they are seriously fit. And also to handle the wipeouts that they're going through is just, I can't even imagine.
Maniacs. So, Montauk, actually, where I grew up, is one of the East Coast surf towns. And my dad he started surfing, and my dad's one of those guys who like started surfing in high school and stopped doing every other sport. And my dad at his peak is a way better surfer than I'll ever be. So I grew up surfing, and we used to go to Puerto Rico every winter on surf trips growing up.
Oh, that's awesome.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, we went. I mean, we were partying too because it started in high school, but it was partying. But we'd surf all day and then have fun at night. No drinking age down there, and but like I always joke with people because I have friends who are really good back home, and I always joke with people like I'm an athlete that can surf. I've never called myself a surfer, more because I can surf. Like if you guys saw me, you'd be like, oh shit, that Ryan can surf. But compared to like pro surfers, I suck. And I'll go surfing with my pro, because it's all relative, right? Like in pro surfers, it's like how big of an air can you do? And how much have you gotten barreled at pipeline? Like that's the top 2% of the world. Like normal people, that's stupid. Like that's not real. I've trained some big wave surfers too, and they're on another fucking planet for sure. They're out of their minds. But literally, so when I was learning all this performance training for myself for rugby, and I started working with a lot of local rugby guys that are still friends of mine today, and they helped me open up some doors. I was also at the time surfing a lot and passionate about like, I wanted to get into, more athlete training. And I actually remember there was, I don't know if you guys know, Mick Fanning is a famous Australian surfer. Mm-hmm. And he famously like tore his hamstring off of his like femur or something in a horrible accident on like a weird wave. And this is when he was really good, but just because he was natural and young and he hadn't trained before. So he rehabbed a ton. And then he got into training, and all everyone talked about is Mick Fanning's doing surf training now. And he literally won 3 of the 4 next world titles. And I was like, I knew that because I was a fan of surfing, but I didn't really know it. And sure enough, like I started researching and Googling, like, and YouTubing surf training. And there was so much stupid shit out there. And like, I got the point of like, some of it made sense, and I used to try some of it. I mean, you can look up me and some old surf stuff, and there's some goofy shit on there from like 8 to 10 years ago that I was trying out. But I realized for the higher level guys, it's bullshit. Like what I was realizing, there's so much surf training was about like balance and like yoga and flexibility and all this stuff. And I'm like, honestly, for normal people, yeah, I could use more of that to get better at surfing. But if we're talking about training for like high level board sport athletes, like surfers, skaters, snowboarders, like I've worked with them. They have freakish flexibility and they have freakish balance. That's why they're really fucking good already. So I realized like, no, they don't, what they actually need and what a lot of my principles are around them is they just need to be better athletes. And, all this balance and stability shit is fine, but surfing is a power sport. Snowboarding and skating are power sports. It's all about force, like producing shitloads of it and then, absorbing and controlling shitloads of it. And it, if you can, and a lot of them, like you said, Brooker, a lot of them are naturally lean people. Like some of them are fit. I have a little Hawaiian dude who's a brick shit house. He probably could have been a good 9 in rugby. I always tell him that. But for the most part, a lot of them are naturally thin and flexible and kind of gangly. And I'm like, you need to get stronger and more powerful and then maintain your flexibility and balance. So, for the sake of longevity. But if you want to get better at surfing and competitive, a lot of it's strength, power, like you said. So there's other studies about the heart rate in surfing. They're doing so much aerobic work and they all surf so much that basically their surf sessions are most of their aerobic work, and it's different levels of that aerobic world. But the energy system work I do with him, I freaking thrash them in here. I get him into it's short, real alactic bouts, whether assault bikes, ski ergs, Metcon circuits. We'll do some work capacity stuff when I want them just to deal with general fatigue. But if we're really doing energy system work, and I tell them, my methodology there is you get really stressed in a contest and you have higher heart rates than when you normally free surf, because they don't surf heats a lot. They surf nonstop, but they don't put themselves in a stressful world. And I've been on comp sites, the anxiety and stuff, it's pretty heavy, whether there's real waves or they think the judges suck or they're going against some better people they perceive as better. It's stressful. So I try and stress them out in here, get them to work on their recovery, breathing, get them to realize like, hey, we're checking a lot of boxes for you when you surf. Here's all the boxes you don't check. That's what we're going to focus on in the gym. And even it was cool. One of the studies years ago that had the guys in heart rate monitors, they basically inadvertently proved that stoke is a real thing, because guys' heart rates were rising during the wave. Like the longer they rode a wave, their heart would rise. But then in the 20 seconds afterwards, it would spike. And it wasn't from paddling fast. Like their excitement levels and, you know, good stress levels were shooting up, and it was affecting their heart rate. So I was like, dude, you guys are in a higher heart rate zone than you think and realize. And we need to tap that in here, especially, you know, in SoCal, there's waves here, but it's not always good. So I know sometimes they're not surfing hard or they're not surfing well. So I'm like, this is when we need to put our efforts into those high level zones, because you're not getting it now. You're paddling around in 2-foot waves and you're not doing heats. So you're out there cruising. So you're in that lower aerobic zone. You're not tapping anything above that. We need to do that in here. So they buy into it. They understand that it helps. I do a lot of skaters too, and they fucking hate that I put them on the assault bike all the time. But I've watched enough contests to know there's so many skaters who it's just lifestyle choice, culture. They're not training. They're gassed after every 40-second run. So I always pitch to my people like, hey, there's your secret weapon. You don't get tired during warm-ups. You don't get tired between runs. You finish a 45-second run in a park or a bowl, and you're immediately getting a sip and thinking about the next one. You're not the stoner over there who's bent over, gasping for air, and he hasn't, you know, trained in his whole life. So like there's a physiological benefit there, but there's also that psychological of like, hey, in a lot of these action sports, that's part of what I'm pitching to them is like, hey, a lot of your competitors don't do this properly. If you do, not only am I going to help you improve physically, but like we can boost your confidence and your belief in yourself, because you've been doing a bunch of traditional sport athletes. I always tell them, I'm like, they don't have a choice. I'm like, rugby players, I've been there. We don't have a choice. If you don't strength train, power train, speed train, run your ass off in the preseason or in season, you can't survive. Like it's actually impossible. And in their sport, some of the best people in the world are complete stoners who don't do anything but the sport. And they're outliers, but people see that and think it's possible. And I'm like, hey, why would you want to risk it? Why wouldn't you want to learn how to sleep and breathe properly and learn how to recover the right way? I have a girl going to the Olympics for skateboarding. She's riding for Poland. Her parents are from there, and she grew up mostly in America. But she's bought into this for the last 3 years, because she knew all these girls going to the Olympics are like 10 years younger than her and probably a little more talented and crazier because she's had a bunch of injuries and whatnot. She bought into it all, and we've like transformed her. And it's because she knew, and she qualified, and she knows some of those events when it was hot as shit or humid as shit, or everybody was making excuses because practice sucked. Because she was fit, she was able to get extra work in, and she was able to not get tired when it counted. And those sound like simple things to other athletes, like that's a given. But in that world, you have to sell that shit, and you have to explain to a surfer, like I mentioned earlier, hey, in October, we're trying to put on a couple of pounds of muscle because you're about to go to the North Shore of Oahu and get destroyed in some of these comps and free surf sessions. And the stronger you are, the less likely you are to pop a shoulder out or to freaking, catch one good wave and then get stuck inside for a 10 wave set because you're paddling so damn weak you couldn't get under the first one. A big part that I'm able to do, even though I'm not a pro in any of those sports, I just know how to do them. I can speak their language. I'm not some rugby meathead trying to train them like a rugby player. they love that I work with rugby because they almost picture me having two different personalities. I really don't. That's the secret. I train them all the same. I just know how to speak to each sport differently. But with the action sports, like especially in the beginning, I'm almost like overselling it. And it's not for the money. They've already paid. It's like, this is why this shit's important. And once you believe that, then we can have very laid back training sessions. You're going to work hard. We're going to talk about the waves. We're going to bitch about the judging at this event, and we're going to have fun. But as long as you understand and believe in this, then, you know, you'll reap the benefits. And I luckily got a couple bigger names when I was younger, especially my one best friend in surfing, Keanu Singh. He's a little Hawaiian firecracker. He's the one who should have played 9. He's built like Faf de Klerk. I literally got with him when he was 19, got him doing all this stuff. Him and his family believed in me. And a couple of years later, he qualified for the CT, the top tour. And a lot of people thought he never would. They thought he was a really good junior who would have had a peak on his abilities because of his size and, you know, air game and talent, all this bullshit. It was other people's perception. But the reality is he bought in to training and actually looking at a pro surfing career like an athlete, not like a surfer. And it worked. And he ended up being my best calling card because everybody now knew, like, oh, they associated us together. And I put out plenty of videos, and it was on purpose. People see him squatting. People see him doing weighted pull-ups. He's really twitchy, so they see him doing a lot of jumps and plyos. Like, I wanted to get that shit out there. I used to use a hashtag, train surfers like athletes, because they are athletes. And it was kind of like a tongue-in-cheek, kind of like putting it out there for the other people who were doing surf training. And it was mostly mobility work or balance work. And I was just like, I disagree with that. You're looking at probably what they're already good at. It'd be like taking a real picture, like the biggest, strongest front rows in the world, and being like, all I'm going to do is get their squat up because that's all they need to pack down in a scrum. Yes. Like, for one, some of those guys are absolute freaks who can squat 500 pounds cold at any time of the year, but they might have no running repeatability skills. They might have shitty hands. They have terrible hamstrings, so they can never accelerate. But you're just squatting because that's what you think they need. Like, that's kind of, I think, the type of presumptions that were in for sport athletes for a while. And I think it's changing. You see a lot more proper training in different areas, and it's awesome to see. But I've definitely had plenty of sales conversations, that whether it's the parents, I've talked to some sponsors and the athletes, like, hey, this is what they need. And I know they think they hate weight training. I'm like, I can get them strong with body weight. And then I can convince them that adding a little bit of load and tempos and a lot more power exercises and deceleration can make a huge difference. Especially a big thing you push in that world is injury prevention. Like, when you guys are hurt, you don't compete. If you're hurt for too long, your sponsor drops you. Like, they all know this is reality. So I push to them like, hey, strength training is your body armor. Strength training is the difference between you rolling your ankle or breaking your ankle. You know, in the skateboard world, their ankles get thrashed. It's brutal. So, like, you have to push that. They have a preconception of, like, strength training is to get bigger and stronger. Like, they either picture bodybuilders or they picture football players. They don't think of, like, proper strength training, you know, deep single leg squats with a light kettlebell, and realizing, hey, we're working on ankle mobility, knee stability, you know, hip and quad strength, which really helps when you land an 80-foot freaking jump on a snowboard. You know, telling them that getting good at deadlifting is really just fine tuning and strengthening their hinge pattern. So when they get in these shitty ass positions on their board, they don't blow out a disc. You know, like, you have to sell it. I try and sell it in the beginning so I don't have to sell it anymore. And then they just believe it. Strength training works because I believe him and he told me it does. And we're just going to keep checking boxes as we go.
I mean, the surf world it's another one of these sports that's just rapidly progressing. I mean, every year there's these new guys coming and doing new things. And
yep.
I mean, I don't know anything about surfing.
I watched it on the Olympics yesterday.
Right, there you go.
Never thought that would happen in my life. Olympics, right, there you go. Crazy.
we have they've just built a surf ranch here in Switzerland in the mountains that is going to be functional all year round. And I mean, you got barrels there and everything. I mean, it's just class, and it's getting so popular. But I mean, I don't know anything about surfing really. I mean, I've surfed a couple times. I spent more time probably fixing the surfboard than I have actually riding it. Because I was exactly. I was the idiot traveling with a surfboard on the side of a motorbike with no cover on it. So every time the bike dropped or there was a rock flying off, it was just, it was a nightmare trying to fix it. But I guess there are some key guys in the world. I mean, even though I'm not a big surf guy, I know Laird Hamilton. I know a lot about him, and he's probably a great role model for some of these guys because, I mean, he's an absolute freak. Do you know much about him, the stuff that he's doing?
It's funny you brought him up.
His work?
I meant to tell you guys that because you guys are always preaching saunas and ice baths and all that good stuff. So a couple years ago, XPT Life, that's Laird and Gabby's, like they have basically a certification process and a program around their training and recovery modalities that he developed basically over 20 years of trial and error because he surfs the biggest waves in the world. And their performance coach, I actually knew from years past. We worked on some athletes, and he actually came down to chat a couple of times. He invited me up to one of it's basically an all-day seminar. They usually do 3-day retreats, and it was just a one-day thing. But I got to experience all of that shit firsthand at their like palace in Malibu, and it's incredible. Like, so starting in the day, Laird takes us through this like on your back breathing journey, and Danny Cipriani was there. He's an England player. Yep. And they're tight. And then another NBA player, Jakim Noah, was there. These two guys are right next to me. We're on the mats. Laird takes us through this crazy breath protocol, like all the different stuff. Like, it's all about CO2 tolerance, educating on that, controlling the brain, understanding how much oxygen you really have in your system. He took us through different nose protocols, slow exhale, crazy counts, crazy holds. Dude, it freaked me out. Like, it literally felt like 15 minutes because it basically forces you to meditate. And when we're all done, he's like, how long do you guys think you've been on the mat? And everybody's like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. And he's like, that was 47 minutes. And like, we all fucking gasped, like, holy shit, I can't believe that just happened. Then we go into the underwater stuff. And I suck at holding my breath. I sink like a stone, which makes me a shitty swimmer. And now we're going to literally hold weights and do like strength movements and carries and swims in their pool. And all they're doing with that stuff, it's just like when you see the guys walking with boulders and shit under the ocean in Hawaii. What they're really training is stress management and CO2 tolerance. Because they're telling you right off the bat, you got like 8 minutes of oxygen in your red blood cells. What the body really wants to do when you want to breathe when you're underwater is get rid of CO2. So they put you in really stressful situations and basically convince you don't need to breathe. Your brain's just telling you need to breathe because it wants to get rid of the CO2. They even teach you how to like skeet out little bubbles when you're underwater to literally get a tiny bit of CO2 so you'll calm down and stay down there. But I mean, I did shit I thought was impossible. It's amazing. It's a very empowering thing. But then last, and this is the only time I've done where you guys do like daily, they have the hardcore, he has like a Yeti sponsorship. So they have a giant ice machine there, 2 huge tubs, and it's out in the sun. So it's like their protocol basically, it's like 75 degrees air and the sun's out. They have their ice baths. It's like more ice than water. They want it between 30, it's like 33 to 35 degrees. And if it goes above 35, they're adding ice. It's hardcore. And basically what they're teaching you, all the down regulation breathing they taught you, they're saying, all right, now you go in the ice bath up to your neck, 3 minutes is the goal. So, and they had us do 3 rounds of it. You go 3 minutes in the bath, and if you're not doing the nasal shit and calming the brain, you're quitting. I saw plenty of people, 5 seconds, they freak out, they jump out of it because it's, you know how it is when it's that cold, it's burning your skin. So you do the breath work, you get out, you stand in the sun for like a minute and a half, and then you go in their sauna, which is like 220. I grew up going to like a regular spa sauna, which we thought was hot. You walk in this place and you think, and it's like a tube one, like old school, like
Barrel
Switzerland
sauna.
style.
Yeah,
Oh my God. You walk in and you think you're like, your eyebrows are going to burn off. And so you do that a couple minutes and then you come back out through the ice. And on the last round of the ice, they just have you submerge and see how long you can hold. I think I did like 8 seconds and it felt like 3 minutes. It was awful. But dude, I told people like leaving that place after doing, not only you conquered shit you're scared of, the underwater stuff, but doing the hardcore recovery stuff like you guys did, I now get why people like get addicted to it. Like I was driving out of there. I even sat in shitty traffic. That was one of the instances I was mentioning earlier, shitty LA traffic for like 4 hours to get home. I was buzzing, like literally the amount of like endorphin release and like, it was wild. I couldn't believe how good I felt after that. And the problem with it, the only problem with it is they tried to do a cert and everything, but you need a really good ice bath, which if you're putting random people in it, needs to be cleaned like every day. You need access to a really good sauna because they hit us up about like being an XPT place in North County. And we're like, we don't have a pool. We could not commit to cleaning an ice bath and emptying and filling it every day. And we don't have a sauna. I love the modalities, but all of that the equipment is the deterrent. The system is awesome. Like, and I've told friends who wanted to do it, I'm like, dude, doing the big retreat, it ain't cheap. And it either happens in Malibu or in Kauai at their mansion on the North Shore of Kauai. So, I mean, the experience is amazing. It's not cheap, but like that one day there. And then every time I hear you guys talking about it, like I get it. If I could do that a couple times a week as just like, you know, on off days or the nights of like, you know, after playing touch rugby and being able to go and hit ice and hot to that level of contrast, it's amazing.
So one of the protocols I love to do is a few rounds of hot and cold. So like whatever, 90, like I do Celsius, and 220 is like 100 degrees, I think, 100 degrees Celsius.
That sounds right. Yeah.
So, you know, like along at 90, but like long, like 20-minute plus, then you go in the cold and then till you're shivering, then you go in and then you're back at 100 and you go 100 cold, 100 cold. And then after that, I found one of Laird's breathing audios online. Mm-hmm. It's like just a video clip of him doing it from one of the seminars. And I do it with a bunch of my guys. And the joke is they call it seeing Jesus because they don't know who the guy is or whatever. But after you're high as fuck from all of the Jesus. Cold. And then with the breathing techniques, I mean, I've had guys after that, they're asleep and you have to go wake them up. You have to wake them up because they're just completely out of it.
I definitely I had practiced a little bit of nasal breathing and like slow exhales prior to that, just for like, when I'm doing like rugby, like anaerobic sessions, like, all right, we got an interval where we get to rest during, like, can I lower my heart rate a little bit? So I practiced a little of that, but I had never ridden that whole wave of like, you know, the ramping yourself up purposefully. And then the crazy down regulation, like you said, during the middle of that, I almost fell asleep. Like during a breath hold, he had us do such a crazy protocol. And then I think I can usually struggle to hold my breath for like 30 seconds. I did like a minute and a half there and barely knew it. And literally during it, I thought I was going to fall asleep. And I'm like, normally when you hold your breath, you're stressed out of your mind. But that's the whole point. Like I've worked with some big wave guys and all, you know, they know they're not really going to be underwater for 6 minutes, but they're learning to turn down the nervous system, turn off the stress and hold their breath for 6 minutes passively, just so to have the confidence and the wherewithal to calm themselves down if they're 30 feet underwater getting the shit kicked out of them by like a Jaws wave. But then I know some guys, they do the hardcore. They do like one of actually the girls I train here, there's some Navy SEALs who have a pool training thing going in La Jolla. And they're guys who got out of the SEALs and wanted to teach their thing. And she's a really good competitive surfer. And that's her, like her other cross training besides coming to me is to go there. I think it's awesome. because they're putting her in super stressful situations. It's not just like, you know, learning to hold your breath for 3 minutes, sitting in a yoga pose. That doesn't really do much. It's like, you know, having to do a bunch of like quick, short breaths and then swim a ton underwater. Cause now you know, you don't have a bunch of air in there and you still have to go a certain distance and all that. If you're a good swimmer, all of that is just stress management and like staying calm and realizing I don't need to breathe. I don't need to breathe. I'm fine. I'm fine. Like that's what I realized from a lot of the underwater shit is it's actually more psychological than it is physiological.
Yeah.
Completely. And that's why for surfers, it's an obvious benefit because, you know, in most waves, it's not, but whether you're a competitive surfer or you go to Hawaii every winter or, you know, chase big waves up at Mavericks or in Maui or some shit, like there's times of year where you can get in a really scary situation. And, you know, typically the better the surfer is, the bigger waves they can handle. Just because they're competitive doesn't mean they're going to be competitive big wave people. That's a different world. But, you know, most really good surfers here will paddle out a pipeline when it's, you know, triple overhead. And that's the most deadly wave in the world. And if they're going there and they have to prove themselves, like the last thing they want to be second guessing is A, their fitness, and B, that the second they're getting a pounding underwater, that they're just going to panic, because panic is that's what's going to fuck them over. They're going to end up in a worse spot if they don't stay calm and realize I need to swim into the channel, or I need to come up for a quick breath and then immediately go back underwater. Like pipeline's scary as shit because it's reef, and no matter how big it gets, it breaks and not a lot of water. So like, it's not like being able to swim super deep is going to help you there. It's more of being calm enough that understanding that the beating is going to happen. And do you know when it's letting up that that's the time to go up or that's the time to swim out? Like, and if they're freaking out, then they're screwed. I've literally almost drowned at a wave that was like a couple feet over my head, breaking right in front of me a couple of years ago. And that puts me into when I see my guys and girls charging the shit they do, I'm just baffled because I know what they're like in the gym. They're good athletes, but they're not superhuman. And when you imagine that they can survive these things, it's hard to imagine, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I remember a couple times being in Brazil and being in water it was too much for me. Now it's easy to look back, but at the time I'm like, no, fuck it, this is how I learn. Let's go out there, get into the thick of it. And I remember a couple times just getting absolutely blasted and thinking, I don't want to be here anymore, man. I want to get I want to get out.
Exactly.
And then even the fight to get back in too, you know, and you just, I've had twice where I've ended up getting back to the shore and on the beach and just lie there and just be like, thank God. Thank God that I got out with this. Once I was in Tasmania and I actually ended up having to climb over the rocks on the end of the bay because the tide was going back and I couldn't get back in, you know? So the next best thing was I could go right to the end of the bay where the rock was. And as I'm trying to climb out and there's all the kelp there, so it's slippery as fuck and the wind is hailing. So the board is like a sail and it was a buddy's board that I'd borrowed. I got getting dragged along all the rocks too. So man, I respect those guys so much, man. That's a serious.
They're crazy. Yeah. And you've experienced it. Like the ocean is unforgiving and it's shockingly powerful. And it's fine. I was joking with somebody the other day, like, I've had a couple scary moments in the last probably 8 years. And it's like, I'm always like, what are you doing, dude? Like, cause now I'm old. I have an excuse of having kids. And when we were younger, there was peer pressure. Like if we're all in Puerto Rico or at home in Montauk and there's a big swell, like if you don't paddle out, you're a pussy that's going to get made fun of until the next time. And you better step up. And the guys in Hawaii, it's even worse. Like I've worked with guys who grew up in Hawaii. They're literally like beat up. If they're out at a real break and they're a young guy and they get called into a wave and they puss out, they literally can get punched or they get sent to the beach and they're literally not allowed back out. And they're labeled like, you're soft. You're not allowed back out here. And it's so cultural and kind of nuts, but like, it's because when you get to that level of like, you're not as scared, then you think everyone below you, it's kind of an ego and caveman thing. Like, I'm not scared to be out there. So why are you? And I'm like, Well, I'm a normal fucking dude. I'm not a psycho who wants to get in a 30-foot wave. Like, I have limits, and I don't get paid for this either. That's my joke with the pros. I don't get paid to surf. So I can say, hey, that's a little big for me. I'm going to go to the gym instead.
It's good for you, man.
Bro, this is fucking great. Let's wrap this shit up. Where can everyone find you?
So RG1 NAKOA on Instagram. That's pretty much my main social. Years ago, when I was getting to Instagram and Facebook, I was like, I can't do Twitter. I had an old marketing gal told me to start it, and I just refused. So Instagram, NAKOA Fit is our website. Plan is to keep working with SD Legion. That's our pro team. Like, I had such a ball this year, and we had a kind of a frustrating season, and I want to help the team bounce back next year. And then Stomp Sessions. Stomp Sessions is that kind of masterclass for action sports. I'm the new performance coach, so I'm doing training tutorials. It's basically very simple training tutorials for skaters, surfers, board sport athletes. Like, hey, minimal equipment, almost like the COVID style. Like, you don't have much access. You're coming back from injury, or you've never trained properly for these sports. I'm going to be it's more education based. I'm using some of the pro athletes that I work with here in those sports, and they also work with Stomp Sessions as well. It's kind of a fun thing for me. It gets my name out there more, but reality, it's like, we've always had people like, oh, I wish you guys were here, you guys were there. It's hard to get the messaging out, especially in action sports, because there's so much bullshit out there. So I'm hoping with Stomp Sessions, I can kind of put out some good content and get people to like start training properly and realizing, there's progressive and smart ways to get better for those sports. There's ways to prevent the injuries that are common in those sports. There's ways to work on the postures and endurance that you might need. And, by having some of the big name pros leading the way, they can, get some younger kids to kind of buy in early and not wait till it's too late.
Right on.
Awesome. Great one. Cheers, Ryan.
Thank you for coming on, brother.
Awesome. Cheers, guys.